Every time we move around with our phone that has Google Maps on it, Google Maps knows where we are. That increases the command capital of Google. They have the power to make you and I, unwaged, without even realizing that we're working for them, produce part of their command capital. These are pretty bleak days. I was very much looking forward to sharing with you my latest fixation. When I say latest, over the last 2 or 3 years, I have this fixation that we no longer live under something that can be defined properly as capitalism. Wherever we turn, we see capital. Capital making gains over labor, over society, over our democracies. And here I am with an outrageous thesis that capitalism is on the way out. Now, where am I coming from? Let's begin with capital, shall we? Now, what's capital? It's not money. It's not a kind of divinity. It's something very tangible. Economists, and I used to be an economist up until fairly recently, we define capital as goods that have been produced for the purposes of assisting in the production of other goods. In other words, produced means of production. That was what capital was. Robinson Crusoe's salvaged fishing gear in fiction, a farmer's plow back in ancient times, in feudal times today, a smith's furnace or hammer. These are manufactured goods that help produce a larger catch of fish, more food, shiny, steely tools. This is what capital has always been. Capital, of course, preceded capitalism. Capitalism is a system, a mode of production and distribution of goods and services, in which the power to compel others to do things is vested in those who have ownership over capital goods. In the previous mode of production, under feudalism, power sprang out of ownership of land. With the transition, the great transformation from feudalism to capitalism, increasingly power shifted from those who had land to those who owned capital goods. Capitalism vested the owners of capital with 2 new powers. The first power was to compel those who did not have capital to work for them. That's the whole point of being a capitalist. Your ownership of capital goods means that you have the power, the bargaining power over people who do not own capital goods, the only capital that they have to offer is their own human labor, to work for you. The second power, of course, is the power of the capitalist class, of those who own the majority of capital goods, to set the agenda, and to set the agenda in the various fora where big, important decisions are taken on behalf of everyone. In the past, under feudalism, it was the landowners that had the power to set the agenda. My hypothesis, which I want to share with you and to try to explain and to convince you about, is that we now have a new form of capital. When I say now, I mean the last 10, 15 years or so. A new form of capital, I shall be arguing, is emerging. And as it does, as it emerges, as it does so, it is forging a new ruling class, a spanking new ruling class, even a new mode of production. There's a second power that command capital grants its owners, whom I call cloudalists. The same algorithms that guide our purchases also have the capacity surreptitiously to command us, the users, directly to produce new command capital for the cloudalists. I need to stress the importance of this. Under capitalism, the only way capital could be generated, could be produced, was when a capitalist had workers working for her or him, usually him, through the production of surplus value. An amount of that surplus value was reinvested into capital goods. So the only way capital could breed was through the labor market, through the labor process, through the manufacturing that was taking place using waged labor at the factory, in the office, in the supermarket. But what I'm saying here is that the cloudalists have a power that no capitalist ever had. They have the power to make you and I, unwaged, without even realizing that we're working for them, produce part of their command capital. Every time we move around with our phone that has Google Maps on it, Google Maps knows where we are, that increases the command capital of Google. So we are contributing directly capital, not through some kind of market, without us being waged or part of the labor process at all. This is a new power that capitalists never had. While all this is taking place, has been taking place now for a good 15 years at least, capitalism itself as a socioeconomic system that went through various transformations and metamorphoses. After the Second World War, it became a planned system with Bretton Woods, with huge constraints, very nice constraints on the bankers, on the financiers. Remember, we had capital controls for 20, 25 years. People, you couldn't move millions or trillions or billions between countries just by pressing a button. So then we had financialization and neoliberalism and globalization. And then we had the massive crisis, the nemesis that followed the hubris of financialization and globalization in 2008. All the banks went belly up in 2008. In April 2009, under Gordon Brown, who was then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, there was a meeting of the G7, the G10, the G20 in London. They coordinated the printing presses of the various central banks, from the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Sweden, the Bank of Switzerland, the Bank of Japan, and so on. They printed a lot of money and they refloated finance. But in so doing, given that the other side of the same coin was austerity for the vast majority of people in the world, you had a combination of austerity for the many and socialism for the bankers with printed money. I don't want to focus on whether this was fair, unfair, it boosted inequality. Of course, it was unfair, and of course, it boosted inequality, but it did something far more significant from the perspective of the lecture that I am delivering tonight. It replaced the role of profits in capitalism with central bank money. Now, as I said before, capitalism has undergone a variety of metamorphoses since its inception in late 18th century in England, Scotland, Wales, and Amsterdam. But all those varieties of capitalism had one thing in common. One thing in common. Actually, two. They had two pillars. All these capitalisms were based on two pillars. One was that the engine that drove them was private profit. Capital accumulation market called it private profit. The second one was that all the exploitation, all the money making, all the value creation, exchange value creation was happening through markets, labor markets, product markets, energy markets, futures markets, financial markets. Markets, profits, the two pillars of capitalism. Well, my thesis, or part of my thesis, is that from 2009 onwards, the role that profits used to play in fueling the engine that pulled capitalism ahead was profits were replaced by central bank money. And you can see that most of the most important companies of the last 10, 15 years don't really make profits. If you look at Uber, Airbnb, Netflix, Spotify, Tesla, very little profits, if any. What drives them is a stock exchange where their shares are going through the roof. And why are the shares going through the roof? Because central banks have been printing the money to make sure that the financial markets remain in rude health. The second pillar, markets, they are on the way out, and I've already explained why. because command capital has risen to such an extent that not only does it tell us what we want, but it also creates the platforms on which we can actually buy that which they tell us that we want. And remember, these are not markets, they're platforms. The moment you enter Amazon.com, you have exited capitalism. In the same way that the moment you walk into the Google campus in California, you exit capitalism because you enter a centrally planned organization with a complete hierarchy. There's no market in Google. In the same way, there is no market in General Motors. There is no market in Volkswagen. The moment you enter the factory, there's no market there. It's like, you know, a Stalinist organization. Maybe it's quite pleasant, but it's still a hierarchical, top-down, non-market organization. The moment you enter Amazon.com, remember, there is one person that owns the algorithm that determines, once you are in Amazon.com, what you see, what you can buy, what you can't buy, what you can't see. Some people see one thing, other people see another thing. It's this algorithm that determines that. This is not a market. This is like a feudal estate, a fiefdom. Only it's a digital one, a digital fiefdom. So if you take seriously my hypothesis so far, what we have is a new kind of capital, which I call command capital, that has given rise to a new ruling class, the cloudalists, with traditional capitalists becoming subsumed, becoming a vassal class vis-a-vis the cloudalists. You have the replacement of profit-making with central bank money, which creates new ways of telling people what to do. Yeah? Because if you are Elon Musk, for instance, your capacity to make the world go round draws from the value of your shares, of the shares of Tesla, of SpaceX, and so on. And those values are not that much related to profit at all. They're related to the state money that central banks are printing, as well as to the command capital of companies that can, through, even when you buy a Tesla, it is command capital that directs the car. You know that when you buy a car like a Tesla, unlike a Volkswagen or Ford or, you know, a Jaguar, the company can just press a button and switch off your car or stop updating it. And that's it. Your car is kaput very, very soon after that. So capital may indeed be everywhere. And it's clearly on a rampage. It is on a triumphant march, flattening democracies, flattening social capital, flattening labor, creating an ever-burgeoning precariat, a vassal capitalist class. But capitalism, as we understood it so far, is on the way as a result of this new form of command capital that is giving rise to a new ruling class. There is no contradiction here. Just a sign of a new form of capital that dispenses with markets and whose reproduction, the production of command capital, is guaranteed by state money, not private profit.